Even before the decision to eliminate steam engines from British railways, experiments were being made with other forms of traction, especially diesel. This series of videos looks at some of those early prototype locomotives, plus the many production diesel and electric classes which became part of the modernization program of the mid-1950s. We'll be looking at the many different liveries of the era and the many types of locomotives, some with us to this day, in this colourful extravaganza of archived diesels and electrics. We begin with a look at the unique 1500-volt DC electric locomotives built for the Sheffield to Manchester electrification scheme of the mid-1950s. These shots were taken in and around Penistone in the late 1970s and feature the Bobo 26,000 class, the larger Cocos having all been sold up to Holland by this time. At the end of the 1970s, it was decided to close the only line which these engines could run on, and thus ended the short career of these unsung heroes of electric traction. Back in time to the 1950s and the prototype Deltic, which became the forerunner of the famous East Coast Main Line Class 55s. Here it is at Rugby. Also at Rugby we see 10201. This was one of a class of 3 built by English Electric from 1951. They weighed 135 tons and had 3'7" driving wheels. The Class 02 diesel. These small locomotives had hydraulic transmissions and were first introduced in 1960. 10,000 was one of 2 diesel electric locomotives built in 1947 for the LMS. They were powered by English Electric engines and had a tractive effort of over 40,000 pounds. We moved down the West Coast Main Line to Blackpool in the mid-1960s, where we see a mixture of electric and diesel electric traction. Some of these locomotives have survived into the 1990s. however, or these Class 25s still work for British Railways. This Class 86 is seen hauling a down Pullman train out of Euston. Only 386s have been withdrawn by 1996, all as a result of the cashback. The Class 47 is seen leaving Waterloo in 1966. Also at Waterloo we see this Class 33. Another Class 47. And a warship. These locomotives were introduced in 1958 and were based on a German design. They had hydraulic transmission. This Class 47 was hauling the Up Bournemouth Belle, a train which had been steam-hauled until the end of 1966. When steam finished out of Waterloo, trains to the south coast were formed by these third rail EMUs. These shots were taken at Bournemouth. The bubble car was at Banbury. And this Hymec D7076 was one of a class of 101 locomotives introduced in 1961 by Bayer Peacock. By 1961, the 1949 Swiss-built gas turbine locomotive, number 18,000, could be seen out of use at Swindon. More shots of warships, still at Swindon. The rail car was also at Swindon. The warships were split into two separate classes, 42s and 43s. This was a Class 42 with Bristol Siddeley Maybach engines. We move on to the East Coast main line, where we see two different production Deltics, or Class 55s. This class comprised a mere 22 locomotives. DP2 had the external appearance of a Deltic, but the internal workings of a Class 50. Built in 1959, the Blue Pullmans were a Metro Camel design. These shots were taken at Old Oak Common Open Day, and present that day was this Class 52 Western diesel hydraulic. and this Hymek. Another Western is seen arriving at Paddington. In the background we can see one of the short-lived North British Class 22s. The 47 is also at Paddington. As is this warship. By this time, the mid-1960s, some of the Class 52s had received the corporate blue livery. Across London to King's Cross, and a closer look at some Deltics. They each carried a nameplate and were either named after racehorses or regiments. They weighed 99 tons and had two-stroke diesel engines. The Class 31s were introduced as far back as 1957, and some survive to this day. This Deltic is seen at Newcastle. As is this Class 46 Peak, another now extinct class. A few weeks after this shot of DP2 was taken, the engine was involved in an accident which spelled the end for this prototype locomotive. It had worked for less than 5 years. The next 3 shots were taken at Hitchin. The Class 45 Peak is sandwiched by 2 Deltics. Some more shots at speed, this time at Slough. Firstly, a pair of warships. One of the blue Pullmans. A Class 52 Western diesel hydraulic. Another blue Pullman. A Class 47. And another Pullman. The Class 85 electric was at South Kenton. So was this Class 86 on a Pullman train. Another 86, this time on a Freightliner. And DP2 again, this time at Stafford when it was new. Also at Stafford we see this bubble car. Western Yeoman, also brand new at the time, was at Snow Hill. Around the same time, this Class 40 was filmed on the Caledonian at Stafford. And an early shot of a Class 52 working on the Western region. The Burton-on-Trent Brewery railway system spent most of its working life employing only steam locomotives, but before it closed in the late 1960s, a few diesel shunters were employed. The Class 40 was near Marston Green. And the Blue Pullman was southbound out of Leamington Spa Station. More Deltics at King's Cross. These Coco diesel electrics were the most powerful production passenger express diesel locomotives on British railways and had a tractive effort of 50,000 pounds. They were fitted with two Napier Deltic engines, which were unique in their triangular shape. Transmission was electric. More Class 52 Westerns, this time at Reading. Unlike the Deltics, Westerns had hydraulic transmission. They were powered by two Maybach engines. Another warship. And a Class 47. Note the elderly Southern Region unit as it passes. This Class 47 is in the original two-tone green livery. The class of 510 locomotives first appeared in 1962, and many survive to this day. And another Western. D0820 Falcon was another one-off prototype locomotive. It was built in 1961 by Brush and had similar engines to the Class 52 Westerns. It was, however, a diesel electric rather than a diesel hydraulic. This Western was towing some ancient units to their final resting place. Another Hymec. These too were diesel hydraulics. The 1A46 head code on this Class 47 tells us that it was bound for London Paddington. Another Class 86 at Euston. E3105 became number 86030 in the late 70s, and today can be seen carrying the number 86430. These shots were taken at Willesden. And the light Class 85 is seen backing up to a train at Euston. Another Class 86. And a general shot of Euston at this time. An early shot of an 85 at Nuneaton. The Class 81 is also seen at Nuneaton. And this track recording machine was filmed as it passed through Birmingham's Snow Hill station. Another Hymec. All these locomotives were either allocated to Bristol, Cardiff or Old Oak Common Sheds.
The train approaching this depot is for Paddington Station, London.
This Class 33 became number 33065 after renumbering, and in 1996 could still be seen working on the southern region. The Red Western was brand new at Snow Hill in the early 1960s. It was number 1061. And now some shots at Southall. The former GWR rail cars survived into BR days, despite being built in the 1930s and 1940s. This one had already been condemned. Another Class 52 Western diesel hydraulic arrives at Paddington. A total of 74 of these engines were built, the first in 1961. By now, the Blue Pullmans were sporting this new style of livery, a livery which they retained until April 1973, when they were all withdrawn. Arriving at Paddington was this Swindon intercity unit. Some more shots at Paddington, all taken in the late 1960s. Firstly, another warship. This HIMEC. The warship as it departs. Another Pullman departure. And a rare visitor to the western region, this Deltic. Here, the same Deltic is seen passing Taplow. This Class 40 was at Appleby on the Settle to Carlisle line. 200 were originally built, but number D322 was an early casualty. A much earlier shot of a Class 40, this time at York. D206 was one of the first batch to be built and began working on the eastern region as early as 1958. Earlier in this video we saw former LMS Diesel Electric number 10,000. Here it is again, this time with sister locomotive number 10,001 at Birmingham New Street Station. The Metrovic Kobo diesel locomotives were peculiar in that at one end they had 6 wheels and the other end they had only 4. Never a successful design, these Crossley engined locomotives lasted barely 10 years. These shots were taken at Derby. Another Class 40, this time near Marston Green. And 2 more at Stetchford. 25 of this class carried names of former passenger liners. Another bubble car, this time near Stafford. Also near Stafford, in the late 1950s, we see 10,000 and 10,001 again. And another shot of the prototype Deltic. 10 years later, and this is a Class 45 peak on the Ribblehead Viaduct. These 1 Coco 1 locomotives weighed 138 tons. Still on the theme of peaks, the next few shots were taken at Kettering on the Midland Main Line. Engine number 45147 was wrecked in an accident near Salford in the mid-1980s. Two more Deltic workings, this time at Peterborough. And some shots at Loughborough. Firstly, one of the original Class 44 peaks. A Class 45. A pair of English Electric Type 1 Class 20s, a class which dates back to 1957. Another Class 44. Another pair of 20s. And yet another Class 44 peak. Deltic number 55020 was named Nimbus and was the first member of the class to be withdrawn. Several more Deltics, all at Hatfield, interrupted only by the passing of one diesel multiple unit. Our final Class 55 is seen arriving at King's Cross. We move to Scotland and see this Class 26 climbing towards Slough with this evening freight. A Class 40, also climbing to Slough summit. pair of 26s at Carr Bridge. A few of these Type 2 Bobo locomotives just made it into the 1990s. All ended their days in Scotland. (26033) was on a train to Thurso, seen here leaving Dingwall. And these 26s were filmed arriving at Aviemore. (40159) is also seen at Aviemore. Today, only the sleeper services bring locomotive-hauled trains to this line. Lots more Class 26s in the far north of Scotland. When steam engines finished at Inverness, the 26s took over and worked these trains for over 20 years until being displaced by the younger Class 37s. This train is seen arriving at Inverness. Sit back and enjoy some scenic shots of these 1958 built Type 2s at work in and around Dingwall. (40101). A few of the trains at this time, in the mid-1970s, were 25-hauled, as seen here with this northbound freight working. Unlike the 26s, the 25s could be seen as far south as Cornwall and as far north as Scotland. This one is seen passing Lonmay Station near Fraserburgh. The Class 27s worked out of Glasgow on the Fort William and Oban trains. They had a higher brake horsepower than the 26s and also carried head code panels. These were at Arica. Number 27036 was at Crean Larrick. Instead of the Crompton Parkinson engines which powered the Class 26s, the 27s were powered by GEC power units. Despite being more powerful than the 26s, the 27s were a few tons lighter in weight. These 27s were at Oban. Back to Arica for our last two 27s. Number 27036 arrives. And number 27019 departs. These trains were steam heated. When the blue Pullman was unavailable, this stock was substituted, and the train was 52 hauled. It's seen here at Birmingham Snow Hill Station. Still in Birmingham, this is the southern approach to New Street Station. Today, it's impossible to get this shot as the location is now inaccessible. The new Moore Street station now stands where this blue Pullman is seen. And now we move to Sheffield, Victoria in the early 1960s. Number 26044 was one of the Class 76 locomotives which never received a name. Seven CoCo locomotives were built for this Sheffield to Manchester DC electrified line, number 27,000 Electra being the first. A further 20 were ordered, but the order was later cancelled. All 7 of these EM2s were subsequently sold to Holland, and Electra has since been returned. The Bobos, or EM1s, later to be designated Class 76, survived for use on freight trains after the passenger service was withdrawn. Back to AC electrics. This Class 85 is seen at Rugby. As is this Class 40. A pair of Class 86s, also at Rugby. This Class 47 is on the Lickey Incline, being banked by a Class 37. The Class 37s were introduced in 1961. One of their many duties in the early days was banking heavy trains on this steep gradient. The train engine was a 9F. Another 9F, this time at Banbury. To the great pleasure of all steam fans, it's seen towing a failed Class 47 diesel. This Class 40 was near Shilton on the West Coast Main Line, and at the same location we see DP2 again. This shot of a Class 45 peak passing a 9F steam locomotive was taken near Muscombe Troughs on the East Coast Main Line. This Class 37 is also near Muscombe. At the same location, we see this Class 33, a slightly larger version of the 26 and 27 classes. Although it's a poor shot, we included this Deltic because it's a rare opportunity to see a diesel locomotive picking up water from the troughs. This Hymek was near Stonehouse. And the 37 was at Banbury on a York to Bournemouth train. Warships were not a common sight at Birmingham's Snow Hill station. Steadfast was one of the Class 43 warships. Western Talisman was another locomotive which eventually came to grief. It crashed in December 1973 at Ealing. Back to Loughborough, and a steam working on the former Great Central Main Line passes over a DMU on the Midland Main Line. This Class 40 was hauling a Pullman train on the East Coast Main Line near Grantham. This Jubilee at Bromsgrove was about to tackle a Lickey incline, assisted in the rear by this Type 3 Class 37 diesel. And another example of a 37 banking a steam working. The Class 33 was at Hockley. Also in Birmingham, we see Hymec number D7092. Followed by another blue Pullman. At Snow Hill, we see Hymec number D7057. Still at Snow Hill, this 47 was hauling a train of brand new cars. One wonders just how many of these survived into the 1990s. Also at Snow Hill, a pair of Class 47s. We end Volume 1 with some shots taken on the very last day of Class 52 workings in February 1977. The special ran out of London Paddington and was hauled by D1023 Western Fusilier and D1013 Western Ranger.